intermediate good. So intermediate goods are things that are used to produce other things, and we don't count those. We're going to count only the final product. And the reason is we don't want to double count. We don't want to count both the sandwich that you buy from the deli and the deli buying the bread, because then we've essentially counted the 2 slices of bread twice. So we only count things when they're final goods and services, and that's why we don't count the intermediate or the raw materials. We don't count used goods that are purchased and sold because they've already been counted, because those used goods were counted when they were originally produced. So all of this is to avoid double counting. Economic. We say we're going to look at the total annual economic output of a nation. Economic output means that we're going to look only at goods and services that have a market-based price. A market-based price. That means that if you clean your own apartment, you're not getting paid for that, and so we're not going to include that. That's not economic output. Yeah, you have to clean your apartment, but you weren't paid for doing it. It was not your job, and so we're not going to count it. If you hire a housekeeper, oh my God, if you're a college student hiring a housekeeper, we have to talk. But anyway, if you hire a housekeeper to come in and clean your apartment, then it's economic output because now somebody is being paid to clean your apartment. So economic output, basically think about it as, is somebody paid to do this? Okay? Economic output means there's output for which there is a market-based price. Total annual economic output in a nation. In a nation. What we're going to look at is the production of goods and services within the borders of whatever border we're looking at. So for the United States, we're going to look at within the United States. If we were doing the economy of Berkeley, we'd look at within the boundaries of Berkeley. If we're looking at the Pacific Rim economy, we'd look at within the borders of the Pacific Rim. If we were looking at the West Coast states, we'd look at the borders of the West Coast states. So we're looking at what's produced geographically look at where it's domiciled in a nation. Annual, we report these numbers annually. They do actually, let me restate that sentence. We report these numbers as annual amounts of production, even though the numbers themselves are reported every 3 months. So every 3 months, they'll say, production in the first quarter of 2014 was $17 trillion. Yeah, not exactly. It means that the production in the first quarter, the first 3 months of 2014, was about 1/4 of $17 trillion because they report it on an annualized basis. So they give you the numbers once a quarter, but every time they give you a number, they're reporting the number on they're reporting the number on an annualized basis. What output would be if there was 12 months worth of production, even though they're only looking at 3. So annual output, and then the last part is total. We're going to have some way of adding up the bottles of water, the lawyer services, the bombs and missiles, and so on and so forth. I'm going to look at that in just a second. So how is it that we come up with this total annual economic output in a nation? How do we compute GDP? What economists and others who work for the Bureau of Economic Analysis do is they're going to compute a sum. So this is the uppercase sigma, which is our summation sign. They're going to take a sum over, let's call it index I, which is going to measure all goods and services. And they're going to take and look at the price of each good times the quantity of each good, and then they're going to add those up. So for instance, if there was only, say, 26 goods and services in the economy, they might take the price of apples times the quantity of apples produced in a particular year, plus the price of books times the quantity of books produced in a particular year, plus the price of zebra-based handbags times the quantity of zebra print handbags produced in a year, and that would be, add all that up, and you would get the total annual economic output in the nation. You would get gross domestic product. Now, when they do this, when they compute GDP, the quantities that they're using, the quantities are the annual quantities for whatever year we're talking about. So if we're talking about 1948, it would be the quantity produced in 1948. If we're talking about 2013, it would be the quantity produced in 2013, and so on. The prices, there's 2 choices for prices. If the Bureau of Economic Analysis whiz-bags are computing nominal GDP, they're going to use current prices, which means that if they're computing, say, GDP for 1948, they're going to use the prices from 1948. If they're computing GDP for 2014, they're going to use the prices from 2014. So when we say they use current prices, they use the prices from whatever year it is they're looking at to evaluate P times Q plus P times Q plus P times Q plus P times Q. So to come up with this total dollar value of output produced, they're going to use the prices from whatever year it is they're looking at. The alternative is a concept called real GDP. And real GDP, you can think of it as they're using base year prices. They're going to use the same price regardless of what year they're computing. So if they're doing GDP for 1948, if they're doing GDP for 2013, doesn't matter. They're going to use the same prices. Whatever year they're doing, it doesn't matter. They always use the same set of prices. Use same prices, set of prices. There's a more technical definition to how they compute real GDP. It has to do with something called chained GDP. The only people who need to understand chained GDP are the folks that work at the Bureau of Economic Analysis. If you're going to get a job there eventually, we can talk in 4 years from now. Don't worry about it. All right, so how big? Well, for the United States, nominal GDP in the second quarter of 2014 was $17.3 trillion. Again, that does not mean that $17.3 trillion worth of goods and services were produced in April, May, June of 2014. It means about 1/4 of that was produced in those 3 months. That if production had continued for the next 9 months at the pace that it was taking in the 2014 second quarter, so if the production had continued, oh my gosh, I'm going to my calendar, from July 2014 through March 2015, at the same pace that production was taking place for April, May, and June of 2014, the economy would produce $17.3 trillion worth of goods and services. About 1/4 of that was actually produced in that particular quarter. $17.3 trillion is 17,300,000 million, or 17 with a whole lot of zeros behind it. It's a lot. It's a big number. Per person, if we divide it by the number of people in the economy, that is to say GDP per capita, it's around $54,000. And again, this is data that comes from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. You can look it all up. It's at bea.gov. The websites that you dealt with the other day were looking at labor. So actually, you were using Fred, weren't you? You were looking at labor data that came. You got it through Fred. Fred got it from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So there's one agency in Washington that does labor and prices. That's the BLS. There's another agency that counts GDP. That's the BEA. Lots of jobs for bureaucrats who like doing things like that. Omissions. Things that are not counted in GDP that you think ought to be because they seem to be economic output. 1, non-market activities. Oh, actually, that one we already know is not included. Okay. Non-market activities, that one actually we already said was not included because those are the non-economic output. So non-market activities, this is making your own lunch, cleaning your own apartment, washing your own clothes. So the non-market, non-economic activities are not included. And the principle behind why they're looking at economic output and excluding these non-market activities is remember that we're trying to come up with a measure of output that links to employment. The ultimate question is what determines unemployment. Unemployment depends upon employment. Employment depends upon output. In the 1940s, when they set up this system for how to count the amount of output that was being produced, the guiding principles were the Keynesian principles. So they were trying to come up with a scheme for measuring that was informed by the story, the model that came out of John Maynard Keynes' work. And Keynes had said unemployment depends upon employment. That's why the BLS is set up the way it is. And employment depends upon output. The decisions that were made about what is and is not output were made because they wanted to get a measure of output that had the tightest possible link to employment, because that was the story they were trying to get some data to back up. So non-market activities are excluded because there's no employment generated. You're not paid to make your own lunch. Second thing, no. Postpone. Okay. Second thing that's excluded or omitted is unreported cash income. Unreported cash income, and the third thing that's omitted, illegal activities. These things are omitted not because they're not conceptually part of GDP. These 2 things are omitted because there's no data. So unreported cash income, Well, let's see. How many people in the room did like babysitting? Right? When you babysat, did you report the income that you earned on your taxes? No? Really? You were supposed to. The babysitting income, that was income. You were self-employed. You had, your babysitting service. The income that you received for babysitting was taxable income. You probably didn't report it on your income taxes, and so it's part of this unreported cash income that is economic activity. You were employed, paid to take care of somebody's kids, but you never reported the data to the Internal Revenue Service, and so there's no measure of it, and so it's not included in GDP. The second thing, I guess it's now the third thing, the other thing that's not included in GDP are illegal activities, not because they're not generating economic output, but because, once again, there's no data. Right? So somebody who is a drug dealer selling illegal drugs, right, unlikely to report their income on their 1040 form in April. If they're not reporting their income because it's illegal activity, we're not going to have any measure of it. And so there you go. The estimate is for the United States, and this estimate varies depending upon what country you're looking at. For the United States, they estimate that the second and third year, that the things for which we have no data, are something between 5 and 30% of GDP. That if we had data for the unreported cash income and data for the illegal activities, our GDP number, that $17 trillion number I gave you, would be another 5 to 30% higher. All right. Oh, I'm going to skip that. 2 ways to measure GDP because I'm running out of time. GDP, total annual economic output of the nation, is things like this podium up here. This is output. It's a good. It's a big hunking piece of, I don't know, it's probably pressboard covered with fake wood. This is a piece of output, this podium up here. But we don't have any direct measure of total output, that is, of the dollar value of the podium. Instead, we have 2 other measures, which should be equal to each other. One is the income that was earned from producing the output, and the other is the expenditure, the spending, for purchasing the output. So, suppose you said this is I know it was expensive because they told me it's got all these electronics in it. So let's say this is a $3,000 podium. It's a $3,000 podium for 2 reasons. We say it's a $3,000 podium because, one, the university spent $3,000 to purchase it. That was the expenditure. So the expenditure was the $3,000 to purchase it. That's one way that we come up with a dollar value for this piece of output, this podium, is by how much was paid for it. The other way that we come up with a dollar value for this podium is what was the total income that was earned by all the people who had jobs putting this thing together. I mean, it starts with, there's no wood. Well, let's suppose. It starts from the people who are the lumberjacks who did the wood, because there's got to be like sawdust or something in there someplace that comes from wood originally. But it's not really, this is not wood, this is actually veneer. It comes from the people who created the plastic, the people who earned income because they assembled the electronic parts, the people who earned income because they put it on the truck, the people who earned income because they drove the truck and brought it to the university, the people who earned income because they unloaded the truck, all of the people who were involved in the process of producing this thing, from the very beginning of the raw materials, which I think is probably the trees because it's probably sawdust glued together inside here, to the end, getting it delivered, all of those people earned some income. When you add up the income that they earned from producing this particular podium, and most importantly, include the profit that was earned by the company that produced this thing, you're going to get that same $3,000. Because if all the workers who were involved in producing this podium, if the total that they were paid was $2,800, then that extra $200, that was profit for the owner of the company. Add the profit into what was paid everybody else, $2,800 plus the $200 profit, voila, I'm back at $3,000. So there's 2 ways that we can put a dollar value on any piece of output, whether it's the pen in your hand or this fancy podium up here. We can do it based on what's paid to buy it, $3,000, or we can do it based on what's the income earned by all the people, including the owner of the company, all the people involved in the production, which again would be $3,000. So I had it in the graphic, I forgot. The total value of income is one measure, the total value of expenditure is another measure, which means the total value of income, that's a big equal sign, and the total value of expenditure are going to be the same. All right, what do we produce? I think this is interesting. Here's a chart that shows what we produce that looks at services and goods and structures. Structures are both houses and non-residential buildings. Goods are tangible things. This is a good. Your clothing's a good. Your pen's a good. Services are the non-tangible, the lawyer services. This was someplace later, I think, in the the lawyer services, the financial services, and so on. What's interesting about this chart is that here we are today. The economy is producing about 65% of what we produce is services, about 30% of what we produce is goods, about whatever's left over there, about 8% of what we produce are structures. Notice the difference between now and 1950, and if I could extend this back, which I don't have the data to do, we'd keep going up. 1950, about 50% of what we were producing was goods. What you'll find as we do the Keynesian model is the Keynesian model was developed at a time when the economy was producing more goods than it was producing anything else. And so the stories I'm going to tell are really stories that make the most sense if we have a manufacturing-based economy. So as we go along, we're going to think about how do these stories change and do these stories change if instead of having a manufacturing-based economy, we have a services-based economy. So I'll show you that graph again. That's there. Just put it in the back of your mind for now. There's an article coming up that I wrote that talks about the rise of services and how that impacts our understanding of macro. Let's look at total expenditure. Total expenditure, that was one of the ways of measuring the total amount of output. The simplifications that we're going to make, the key simplification, is we're going to divide the total amount of expenditure into 4 categories. We're going to look at spending by each of 4 groups. We're going to have spending by households, by government, by businesses, and by the rest of the world. I'm going to walk through that a little more carefully over the next 5 minutes. But here's a chart that shows you graphically some numbers I'm going to show you in just a few minutes. So consumption is about 2/3 of total spending. Government spending and investment are both down here around 20%. And net exports, a term I will define in a few minutes, is negative around 5%. So that, again, that's a picture you'll come back to. Let me walk through the words. All right. Consumption spending. Consumption spending is one of our categories of expenditure. Consumption spending, as you saw, is about 70% of the total. That's spending by households for final goods and services. It doesn't matter where these goods and services are produced. They could be produced here, they could be produced in other countries. In either case, if it's spending by U.S. households, then it's consumption spending by U.S. households, and it counts in what we call C for consumption spending. The second category of expenditure is investment spending. We use the uppercase I to stand for investment spending. Investment spending, 15, 17, 18, somewhere around there. So let's say 15 to 18. It varies. Percent of the total. That's spending by businesses for capital. Remember our definition of capital? Capital is machines and buildings. So it's spending by businesses for construction of new buildings, be those residential or non-residential buildings, purchases of new equipment, and also changes in the value of the goods they have in inventory. So if you have a business that starts the year with, say, $10,000 worth of stuff in inventory, which is you always want your stores to have something in inventory, it's much more fun to shop that way. If they start the year with, say, $10,000 of goods in their inventory, if they end the year with $15,000 worth of goods in their inventory, we would say their inventory holdings had gone up by $5,000, 15 minus 10, by $5,000, and we would count that as part of their investment spending. Most of investment spending is these first 2, construction and equipment. Where am I on time? I'm going to skip this slide and come back to it if I have a minute. Okay, government spending. Government spending is G. Is what we use for government spending. That's purchases of goods and services by government agencies. It includes payroll, so I'm in there, right? So I work for a public institution, so my salary is part of G because it's part of the spending by the University of California, which is a state government agency. Government spending is spending by federal, state, and local government agencies. All of your public school teachers, all of the books, if they bought books, whatever supplies they bought at your public school, all of that's in G. All the Army expenditures, those are in G. All the fixing the roadways, that's in G. All of that's part of government spending. No, go away. No, God, sorry. Export spending. EX stands for export spending. Export spending is around 10 to 12% of the total. Export spending, that's spending by the rest of the world for goods and services produced in the United States. So export spending, those are goods and services produced here in the United States, but sold to people who are residents of other countries. It does not matter where the transaction takes place. So it could be that somebody from, Italy, somebody from Italy comes to the Bay Area and buys some California wine. That's an export of wine from the United States to Italy. It could also be that the winery in Napa Valley boxes up their wine and ships it to Italy, and somebody buys California wine in Italy. That's an export of wine from the United States to Italy. It doesn't matter where the transaction takes place. What matters is that it was produced in the United States and purchased by somebody from another country. And then we have import spending. Import spending is 15 to 17% of the total. It varies. This is spending by U.S. households, businesses, and government for goods and services produced outside of the United States. It does not matter where the transaction takes place. If I travel to France and buy a bottle of wine, I like wine, obviously. I travel to France and I buy a bottle of wine in France, that's an import of a bottle of wine from France to the United States. If I go down to Safeway and I buy a French bottle of wine, that's an import of a bottle of wine from France to the United States. It doesn't matter where the transaction takes place. What matters is where the good was produced outside the United States and who purchases it. Somebody who is a person or a business or a government agency in the United States. The total expenditure is consumption plus investment plus government plus exports minus the imports. We're going to subtract off the imports. These last two combined, that's the net exports that you saw in the graph. I had a whole lot of clicker questions that came next, but you have your gold sheet, which has about 18 equivalents to my clicker questions, and in section you get to do another 15 or 18 of those things that are the equivalent of my clicker questions, and now you get lots of allocating of activities to see IGX imports or nowhere. Bye, y'all. Have a good weekend. Go Bears.